Madam President, I wasn't sure if I would continue to wear my mask coming over here. I saw you were wearing yours, and I said, well, I'll just keep wearing mine too. And all of our staff on the floor, including one of our staff members who takes down our words for the congressional record, and folks who accept documents at the desk in front of us, all wearing masks. And I was wearing a mask earlier today going into what we call a markup, a business meeting, the Environment and Public Works Committee. And they're also wearing a mask as I was about to go into the hearing. The business meeting was a police officer. And I asked her, she's a Capitol police officer. And I said to her, how are we doing? How are you doing today? And she said, I'm doing fine. I said, any idea how many of our Capitol police officers have been infected, or have developed symptoms, and have had the virus at some point in recent weeks? And she said, I believe it's somewhere between 15 and 20, which came as a surprise to me. We haven't heard that much about it. But coming over here today, this afternoon, we've been here to vote several times, and just coming over here this afternoon to say a few words about legislation that we passed unanimously out of the Environment and Public Works Committee today. I passed any number of people, Capitol police officers, people that were cleaning the building, maintaining the building, folks who serve food in the cafeteria so that the people who are working here can get something to eat. They were almost without exception wearing masks. And the reason why it's important for us to do that is because they are at risk. And we need to exhibit as leaders, we need to lead by our example. And I know my colleagues are endeavoring to do that, and it's important. These are people who serve our country just as we do, and they deserve not just our respect and our thanks, but they deserve our protection. And for everybody who maybe does something they're not comfortable with doing or used to doing, and wearing a mask or hand sanitizing a lot, they're washing their hands every other hour, even more, these are good things. Not just for us, not just for our families, but for the people who are serving this country here with us in our nation's capital. Madam President, I didn't come here today to say those words, but I wanted to, they're on my heart, and I just wanted to share them with you and others. But I've come today to talk about a couple of bills that the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works reported out today unanimously that will invest and improve our nation's water infrastructure. Our water infrastructure. What does the infrastructure include? It includes the pipes that bring us our water, or that take our wastewater effluent where it can be treated. Infrastructure includes our dams, it includes our harbors, our ports, our waterways, all that and a whole lot more. When we talk about improving our water infrastructure, what we're really talking about is keeping the promises afforded to every American through the Declaration of Independence. Remember those words? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The legislation that we acted on today, two bills that will be combined into one here later on the floor, called the Water Resources Development Act. But the underlying message is our work today directly reflects those words in the Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Certainly none of those things, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, are possible without access to clean water, whether it's to wash our hands or to drink. We can't have life without clean water to drink. The COVID-19 pandemic has reminded us of that too, just how important it is to have access to clean water to wash our hands, and soap to wash our hands. We're reminded daily, I think almost hourly, that washing our hands with soap and water is a simple yet effective way to prevent the spread of this deadly virulent disease. In our committee today, Environment Committee today, Senator Sullivan from Alaska talked about the Native Americans who live in his state who don't have running water. They don't have a spigot to turn on. They don't even have the ability to flush toilets. For them, this is like the idea that you could actually do those things is just a dream that they would never imagine being realized. The thing is, too many communities across our country do not have access to clean water because of harmful contamination in their groundwater or water supply pipes. Sadly, this public health disparity usually goes hand in hand with economic opportunity. And while water is the essence of life, it's also an essential part of our economy. More than 99% of the U.S. overseas trade, more than 99% of U.S. overseas trade moves through our waterways. Imagine that. Most people would never imagine that. Our nation's water infrastructure, our ports, our shipping channels, and other related projects support economic growth, facilitate commerce, sustain jobs, and create new jobs as well. Americans cannot truly pursue happiness without the economic opportunity that comes with having strong water infrastructure, a lot of which we can't see. We've been joined on the floor by the chairman of our committee. There's pipes and wastewater treatment plants and the facilities that clean the water for us. We don't see those. Fortunately, somebody does. Somebody's built them. Somebody maintains them in order for us to have that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, today, our committee, led by John Barrasso, senator from Wyoming, I have the privilege of being the ranking Democrat on that committee. We approved 2 bills that are going to help us keep those promises laid out in that Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. America's Water Infrastructure Act of 2020 and the Drinking Water Infrastructure Act of 2010 will help the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Environmental Protection Agency make improvements to key water infrastructure systems throughout our country. The programs we passed in our committee today will support the Army Corps of Engineers operation and maintenance of, listen to this, 13,000 miles of commercial deep draft ship channels. 13,000 miles. 12,000 miles of commercial inland waterways. I said just earlier, Mr. Chairman, before you joined us, that I explained how 99% of the cargo that we send to other countries or that comes into ours comes by ship. Doesn't come by airplanes, doesn't come by train, it comes by ships. And those ships don't move without waterways largely maintained by the Army Corps of Engineers. These are little-known projects that keep our economy moving. They're essential to our way of life as well. And what comes into the port of Los Angeles today will be on the shelves of stores in the Midwest a day or so later. In Delaware, we have a port on the Delaware River. It's called the Port of Wilmington, not far from where I live. My wife and I live. It supports more than 19,000 jobs in our region. For a little state, and big states, 19,000 jobs, that's not much. That's a rounding error. Delaware, Wyoming, that's a huge deal. Port of Wilmington is the United States' top seaport for fresh food imports. If you happen to live in the eastern part of the United States and you got up and had cereal this morning with some banana on your cereal, it's a good chance that that banana came through the Port of Wilmington. The Army Corps is working diligently with our port on an expansion project that will open a channel to a new containment facility just north, a couple of miles north of the current port along the Delaware River. And the Army Corps is responsible for dredging and maintaining access to this new channel, which over time will support more commerce, more jobs for our region, not just for our state, but for our region. We're such a small state, we're like, you can stand, probably draw a circle around the house where my wife and I live, about a 10-mile radius. You cover New Jersey, you cover Pennsylvania, and you get pretty darn close to Maryland as well. So the impact will be a regional impact. In addition to authorizing necessary core projects, the 2 bills that we reported out of our committee today unanimously, Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund, let me say that again, the 2 bills that we reported out of our committee today included authorizing the Clean Water Revolving Fund for the first time since 1987. We created, it used to be EPA would provide grant programs to fund water projects in states, to help fund water projects, to help fund wastewater treatment projects in our state. And we changed that when Ron Reagan was president. And we have these revolving loan funds. The federal government replenishes them every now and then. And the states ship the money and invest the money out of those funds. But we haven't reauthorized the Clean Water Revolving Fund, which focuses less on drinking water and more on cleaning water, reducing the effluent that we're putting out in our communities. So many of our communities rely on this fund to improve their wastewater systems. In the drinking water bill, the corollary, We also authorized more than $500 million to provide critical drinking water infrastructure through the Small and Disadvantaged Communities Grant Program. That I just talked about earlier when I spoke of Senator Dan Sullivan's comments in our hearing today, when he talked about Native American communities in his state who don't have flush toilets in a number of cases. They don't have clean drink. They don't have turn on the faucets and the clean water just comes out. And there are other communities, not just there, in my state, at one time not long ago, in other states where they're disadvantaged programs, communities, and we have a grant program that we're going to use to help more and more of them, not all of them, but more of them. And this will help us keep the promise of clean, safe drinking water, maybe not for every American, but for Americans, and no matter what their zip code is or what kind of bank account they have. I think Matthew 25 pertains here. I don't care what our faith is. Matthew 25 starts out with these words: when I was thirsty, did you give me to drink? When I was hungry, did you feed me? Well, when I was thirsty and I didn't have any clean water to drink, what did you do about it? Well, in this bill, we do something about it. I'm proud of what we've done. And as we work to ensure clean water for all, our drinking water bill will continue our work to address what are called forever chemicals. A forever chemical is a chemical that doesn't degrade. And there is a word that's about a mile long. There are a couple of words that describe it, but we call it PFAS. That's the acronym. I'm not big on acronyms, but on this one, I like this one a lot. But these are forever chemicals. There's thousands of them that don't degrade in our environment. And for the most part, they're not dangerous, but a couple of them are really dangerous. And they can lead to thyroid and liver disorders. They can increase risk of cancer. They can adversely affect people's immune systems. We have a pretty good idea which ones they are, and we need to do something about it. And we sought to do that earlier this year, late last year, through other legislation. We have an opportunity with the bill that we reported out today to do more good work on addressing these forever chemicals. And one of the ways is by developing a clean drinking water standard for two of them that are most concerning: PFOA, we call it PFOA, and PFOS. And between today reporting the bill out of committee and the time we come back to the floor to debate it here, we have the opportunity, I hope, to do even more good work in addressing that. Madam President, I know you have a military base in your state. I've been to one or two of them. We have one big military base in our state. It's the Dover Air Force Base. Biggest in Florida we have in the central and southern part of our state, 6,000 uniformed and civilian personnel. They have some of the biggest planes in the world, C-5s. They have C-17s. It's a cargo base, and it's been recognized many times as the best cargo base in the world, best Air Force base in the world, too. And about 5, 6, 7 years ago, one of our C-5s took off to fly around the world, carrying a full load of fuel, full load of cargo. And as they took off the 4-engine airplane, the flight engineer noticed an engine light came on one of the engines, not a good sign. And the flight engineer turned off, not that engine, turned off another engine. And then he had like 2 engines working and 2 engines not working. Long story short, the airplane came around and tried to land again, where it had just taken off, crashed a mile short of the runway. And fortunately, nobody was killed. Firefighting teams, the fire departments came rushing out and foamed down the area and helped put out the fire. Nobody died. I'm sad to say, when I was on active duty as a naval flight officer at Moffett Field Naval Air Station one morning, driving into work many years ago, the huge fire, one NASA airplane, big plane, landed on top of one of Navy P-3 airplanes. Killed everybody. I think one person survived in the whole crash. Again, folks, the firefighters rushed out and tried to save lives with its firefighting foam. The irony is a cruel irony here, because that firefighting foam, which is used to save lives in air crashes and all, actually, when it rains, it gets washed into the ground, and a lot of times ends up in wells and under groundwater that people drink and consume, and creates very serious health results for that. So anyway, between now and today, And time our bill comes to the floor, our bills come to the floor, we hope to make some more progress in addressing those forever chemicals. Well, millions of Americans rely on the Army Corps projects to safely navigate our waters, to stay safe from flooding and storm damage, and reap the benefits of healthy aquatic ecosystems and marshlands. But we know the impacts of the climate change pose a real threat to public safety and to the durability of our infrastructure. I like to use the example of Ellicott City, Maryland, not even 30, 40 miles from here. A couple of years ago, within 18 months of each other, they had 2,000-year floods. What is a 2,000-year flood? It's a flood that's supposed to occur every 1,000 years. We had 2 of them within 18 months of each other. And we're seeing that kind of extreme weather places all over the country. And we need it. It not only wreaks havoc on our homes and our businesses and our road transportation systems, but also our drinking water systems. And one of the things that we do in our bill is to address that. And these 2 bills expand grants that will help small and medium-sized communities increase the resiliency of their water systems to natural hazards and extreme weather, like what they've experienced in Ellicott City and any number of places around our country. Before I yield the floor, Madam President, to my friend and colleague, our chairman, John Barrasso, who's patiently waiting for me to stop talking, I want to thank him. Again, I already thanked you once, but now that you're here, I want to thank you again, colleague. But I want to thank you for your leadership in helping us to move this legislation through. We've all heard this, a saying says, I think it's Joe Biden saying, said just because somebody is my adversary or somebody on the other side of the aisle, they don't have to be my enemy. And we're actually, don't let this word get out in Wyoming, so probably, I think we could say we're friends. And we like to work together, and our staffs most days like to work together, and hopefully we can do even better. But I want to thank him. I want to thank his staff. I want to thank all the senators. He and I pleaded with our colleagues from all 50 states to give us their ideas of what should go into this bill. And a bunch of our colleagues, the majority of them, did that. So it's not just something we dreamed up on our committee, but got great input from a whole bunch of our colleagues, Democrats and Republicans, and we're able to put together a bill that passed our committee unanimously. I just want to mention the names of a couple of people who, on both sides of the aisle, and they include Richard Russell, Brian Clifford, Andy Harding, Lizzie Olson, Susan Lucas, Craig Thomas, Beth Lang, Christina Robius, Matt Bleggett, who work for Senator Barrasso, and on my team, Mary Frances Repko, our staff director, Mark Mendenthal, Annie D'Amato, and John Kane, who works harder than about anybody person I've ever had the privilege of working with. Lastly, Senator Barrasso introduced me last year or so to a fellow from Wyoming, and who'd been nominated to be a very senior official in the Commerce Department. And he'd been nominated for a position where he would be an assistant or assistant secretary of Interior to handle, among other things, national parks, national wildlife refuges, fish and wildlife. Big job, an important job for all of our states, certainly mine and certainly Wyoming. And during his testimony, Rob Wallace testified, I thought, so well. And it's hard not to like the guy. Just liked him almost immediately. But he said these words to our committee. He said, bipartisan solutions are lasting solutions. That's what he said. Bipartisan solutions are lasting solutions. And I sat there that day thinking, boy, he nailed it. I've stolen that line. Sometimes I give him credit for it. Sometimes I don't. But think about that. Bipartisan solutions are lasting solutions. We need lasting solutions. We especially need them with respect to making sure those words in the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness aren't just words on a sheet of paper or old words on a piece of parchment, but they're real words today, and that we have renewed our commitment to them. And we've done that with the legislation we reported out of our committee. Still some work to do, harbor maintenance fees, to try to resolve that. People with strong views, not always in sync with one another. And the legislation, these forever chemicals, and how do we deal with that in ways that are smart and respect science and enable us to make sure that we better protect people's health. So I think that's it. These bills, in closing, are a win-win-win for our nation's economy, for our public health, and for our environment in a time we desperately need it. And as we face down the COVID-19 crisis before us, I hope that these 2 pieces of legislation will serve as a model for how we can continue to work together, which is what I intend to do with our chairman. And I'm happy to yield to him at this time. Thank you.